I think most of us, when we talk about Erdogan, we say that he's phony, he's not doing anything. But the situation that is happening in Syria is so much serious, Scott. Israelis are attacking the regions that are somehow connected to the Turkey and the Turkish government, Turkish military. This is not something, it seems to me, something that we we don't hear much about it, but it's something happening that maybe explodes at any moment. Something big happens between the two, and Israelis were afraid of Turkey. So far they were talking, the Israeli media was talking about Turkey as the main enemy, even greater enemy than Iran. They see the threat, they see the confrontation that they're facing with Turkey. How do you see that front? How do you see the way that Turkey is somehow trying to deal with the situation, with the problem that they're facing in Syria?
Well, I mean, Turkey helped create this problem. They were been working hand in glove with the United States, with Qatar and others to bring down the regime of Bashar al-Assad, and they succeeded. But sometimes you have to be aware of what you ask for, because sometimes you get it. And I don't think anybody expected Assad to fall as rapidly as he did. There was no plan for success, and to have Jolani suddenly emerge as the president of Syria. The Turks had a whole Syrian government in exile that was supposed to take control, but they lost control of the narrative, and Jolani's now the guy. So Turkey's been playing catch up ever since. Turkey has the issue of the Kurds that it has to work with. They're working with the United States on how to manage that issue. They continue to work on managing their own Jolani problem. I mean, Idlib province is by all measures a Turkish province, and it was meant to be a temporary holding ground for these Islamists, but now these Islamists have become empowered. They've taken over Syria. Now Turkey has to deal with this reality. How does Turkey deal with the millions of Syrian refugees that are a huge political problem for Erdogan? How do you return those refugees to Syria in the face of the atrocities that are currently taking place? They have to manage the Russia issue. Russia still has bases in Syria, and still being sorted out what role, if any, Russia will have in the future of Syria. And, the United States has to be consulted in all of this. And then you have Israel. And Israel's just basically doing whatever it wants to do right now in Syria. They're writing their own playbook, and nobody's able to or willing to stand up to them. The danger comes when there's no longer a buffer between Israel and Turkey. The danger comes when there is direct connectivity between the Turkish military and the Israeli military, because now you will have force-on-force contact, and both sides will escalate to defend. And you could see very well a major war break out between Israel and Turkey. I think right now the Turkish goal is to prevent that. Keep in mind that Turkey has a larger strategic plan that involves turning Turkey into a regional energy hub. And a key aspect of their planning for this was incorporating the massive gas fields that exist off the coast of Israel to capture this gas and bring it to the hub and use it as a vehicle of empowerment for Turkey, to help Turkey, set, the price and, become the source of energy for not just Southern Europe, but all of the region. Having a decisive split with Israel would be very disruptive to that. Having a war with Israel would be disastrous to that. And so, I think what we see with Turkey is that Israel knows and understands it can get away with a lot, because it recognizes that Turkey's long-term ambitions aren't centered on Syria per se, but centered on the region. And that right now Israel has significant latitude to do just about what it wants in southern Syria without fear of any major Turkish Turkish involvement. Erdogan will just have to sit there and eat his tie, because there's nothing he can do about it, nothing he's willing to do about it. Because even though Turkey does have the ability to stand up to Israel, the price Turkey will pay in the long term in terms of the disruption and perhaps termination of their goals of being a regional energy hub would be devastating to Turkey's long-term political, economic, and geopolitical posturing.
Do you see any sort of alternative movement in Israel to change the course? Here is what Naftali Bennett said, Scott.
When the US president tells the Emir of Qatar, or attempts to reassure him that this kind of thing won't happen again, are you saying he's in fact lying?
No, that's what you're saying. I'm not saying that.
No, he's told the Emir of Qatar this is not going to happen again. You're saying wherever Hamas is, we're going to go after them. So you would attack Qatar again?
I'm not going to say what we're going to do or not going to do. I will tell every terrorist on earth.
Minutes. You said we will do it again.
Let me be clear. Any terrorist on earth who's planning to murder Israelis, planning to murder Jews, will be killed if necessary. Nothing will be a safe haven for terrorists who want to murder my people.
And that is the position of the Israeli government, regardless of what the US president is saying, that this won't happen.
Yeah. Scott, how do you see the situation in Israel? What can we get out of these oppositions, those people who are not happy with the Netanyahu administration? I would say Naftali Bennett was some sort of an alternative for what's going on, but he has the same sort of mindset, the same line.
How could he be an alternative? Naftali Bennett is a former Israeli commando who operated in Lebanon back in the 90s. He was carrying out a reconnaissance mission, trying to locate Hezbollah Katyushka rockets when his team was detected, and he panicked. And he called in artillery support that ended up striking a United Nations base, hitting a bunker that had a large number of civilians in it, killing these civilians. And then Israel tried to cover it up. But the bottom line is Naftali Bennett is knee deep in war crimes. He is a war criminal. Tigers don't change their stripes. He has been articulated in favor of direct action violence against anybody he or Israel labels a terrorist. So no, you're not going to get any change. The fact of the matter is, while there is differences of opinion in Israel about how to handle the hostage situation and such, the majority of Israelis support the aggressive policies on part of the Israeli government to defend the Israeli people from what they perceive to be, terrorist forces, as Naftali Bennett said, are out to kill my people, kill Jews. And so, no, there's no alternative to Netanyahu. He's a criminal right now. There's many people frustrated with, aspects of domestic policy. But the bottom line is, let's say Netanyahu killed over dead of a heart attack today. The Israeli government that took his place would continue these policies. They'd behave the same way, because this is Israel we're talking about. Netanyahu's not an aberration. Netanyahu is the norm. He is the standard. Israel is a criminal enterprise ruled by criminal people who have a sense of criminal entitlement. And when I call it criminal entitlement, it means that they are willing to commit crimes to maintain their status as the region's, exceptional nation. No, there's no alternative to Netanyahu. There's no alternative to Israel except the total demise of Israel. Israel is a poison pill for the region. Israel is a cancerous tumor. Israel is a parasite. There's no way you can put lipstick on this pig. I mean, Israel is just a criminal enterprise, with or without Netanyahu. And Naftali Bennett is just typical of the genre, typical of the breed. All he wants to do is kill. He doesn't know peace. The Israelis don't want peace. What the Israelis want is supremacy. You know, they call that peace. But in order to get there, they have to kill everybody, and they will kill everybody. They have no qualms about this. There's no humanity in Israel. They don't shed tears about the children that they kill every day. They don't shed tears for the innocents that are starving to death. The Israelis share tears for Jews who were killed, for Israelis who were killed, but there's no sense of humanity here. They have no empathy towards the other people of the region. And at the end of the Second World War, during the Nuremberg trials, there was an American psychologist who was observing the Germans. I guess the Americans got upset that one of the Nazis committed suicide before he could be brought to justice. And so they brought this guy in. His job was to calm the nerves of these guys by talking with them and all this. And afterwards, he was asked to define evil. He said, it's a lack of empathy. That the Germans on the surface seem like normal people. They love dogs. They love their families. They could laugh. They could joke. But when it came to their fellow human beings, there was a total lack of empathy. And that's Israel today, a total lack of empathy for the Palestinian people, for the Syrian people, for the Iranian people, for the Lebanese people, for the Qatari people, for anybody who's not a Jew.
It seems that what is happening in Doha would somehow strengthen the position of Hezbollah in Lebanon, because they're trying to disarm Hezbollah, and the negotiation and pressure going on there. How do you see the government in Lebanon and their position in somehow disarming and putting pressure on Hezbollah? If there is no Hezbollah in Lebanon, who's going to defend Lebanon? Do they have any army, any replacement for Hezbollah? Or Israel, let's assume we remove Hezbollah from the scene in Lebanon and Israel goes underground. Who's going to defend Lebanon?
Not the Lebanese army. Lebanese army is long considered to be a faction of Christian and Sunni elites. Hezbollah exists because the Shia population of southern Lebanon have been neglected for so long by the Christian and Sunni elites that have controlled Lebanon politically and economically for decades. It was only after the Israeli invasion of southern Lebanon in the 1980s that the Shia were able to transform into a resistance movement. Initially, Amal was a big resistance to the Amal militia, but then the Party of God, Hezbollah, was created with significant Iranian support. And Hezbollah was able to actually defeat Israel. I mean, people tend to forget that, but Hezbollah threw Israel out of southern Lebanon, except for the Shebaa farms. The thing that gives Hezbollah legitimacy isn't some notion that Hezbollah wants to destroy Israel or occupy Israel. All Hezbollah wants is for Israel to leave Lebanon. That's why there's a resistance movement. The moment Israel leaves Lebanon, then Hezbollah, I think, could begin to talk about disarming. But rather than being a full disarmament, it would be the integration of Hezbollah into the armed forces of Lebanon, because Hezbollah is recognized as being the only entity capable of defending Lebanon against Israeli acts of violence. Even in this most recent conflict, while Israel was able to, drop bombs on Hezbollah leadership and on Hezbollah storage facilities, maybe ballistic missile launch capabilities, etc., on the ground, whenever Israeli forces closed with Hezbollah ground forces, Hezbollah won, beat them back every time. The Israelis didn't win. Eventually, the Hezbollah leadership said, stand down and withdraw, but Israel didn't defeat Hezbollah on the ground. This is the reality. The only people who are going to defend southern Lebanon against Israel is Hezbollah. They'll either do it as a resistance movement or they'll do it as part of a Lebanese armed forces structure. As a resistance movement, they'll exist until which time Israel leaves Lebanese soil. I think we just saw that both Hezbollah and Amal withdrew from the Lebanese government, at least during the consideration of the American proposed disarmament talks. They won't be a party to that. And I think we're starting to see, the reality that Hezbollah isn't going to disarm while Israel is on Lebanese soil. And there's not a damn thing the Lebanese government can do about it, because push comes to shove, Hezbollah can take down the Lebanese government tomorrow if they wanted to. They don't want to. They want to be part of this government. But the idea that Hezbollah is going to go away and just disappear because Israel wants them to is ludicrous. Has Hezbollah suffered setbacks? Absolutely. They have. I mean, this is not the Hezbollah of 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But Hezbollah still has the ability to defend Lebanese territory against the Israeli invader. And as history has shown, it wasn't the long-range missiles of Hezbollah that prompted Israel to leave southern Lebanon in defeat in 2000. It was Hezbollah's ground troops who relentlessly attacked the Israelis, never let up, showed superior tactics, showed courage in the face of fire. That's what defeated Israel. And that's what will defeat Israel again. Maybe Hezbollah won't be able to repeat what happened in 2006 with all of the rockets or, launch long-range strikes. But when it comes to on-the-ground resistance, Israel can never match Hezbollah. And as Hamas has proven, a determined fighter operating on ground that they have prepared for battle is unbeatable. Israel can't defeat Hamas in Gaza, and Israel damn sure can't defeat Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Today I talked with Alistair Crook. He said that the policy of the United States in the Middle East is the total capitulation of the countries who are opposing their policies in the Middle East. But with the case of Donald Trump and his administration, is somehow the Israeli government or the Netanyahu administration somehow managed to convince him before attacking Iran that they're going to do something big. And before attacking Qatar, they said that they're going to remove the leadership of Hamas. So it's a gamble for Donald Trump. And this gamble was managed by Israelis, and they convinced him that they can do something. How many more times do they need to understand that they cannot form their policy based on what Netanyahu is doing in Israel? They need to have something beyond that. They need to have a strategic plan for the Middle East, not just total capitulation. Maybe a better relationship with the countries in the Middle East. Maybe look at what Russia and China are doing in the Middle East. Buying partnership, buying friendship, not going and fighting and bombing countries.
Logically, you're right. I mean, there is a better way, logically speaking. That's never going to happen in the Trump administration. First of all, we're dealing with an anti-establishment administration in every way, shape, and form. There are no institutions that are lining up in support of this presidency other than those institutions managed or controlled by pro-Israeli lobbies, AIPAC and others. The president has stacked his team with Israeli loyalists, absolute Israeli. And the irrationality of these loyalists is beyond belief. I mean, you take a look at Mike Huckabee. I mean, this is literally a character out of a horror movie. The apocalyptic Armageddon-laced nonsense that he spews should scare everybody. But no, he's the American ambassador to Israel, so he gets to say whatever he wants to say. When you have, because normally you'd have to worry about what the mainstream media says. You have to, public opinion is shaped by this. But we live in a day and age now where mainstream media, especially in the Trump era, isn't trusted by anybody that supports Donald Trump. So it's irrelevant what they say. I mean, they're literally singing to the choir, reinforcing positions held by a political opposition that isn't viable anymore. I mean, the Democratic Party hasn't shown an ability to, rally any significant anti-Trump, political movement. Instead, you have people like Laura Loomer, who, who the hell is she? Nobody, except she's got the ear of Donald Trump, and so she can loomer people. She'll put out, I think this person's an Islamist. I think this person's this. I think, and she'll destroy people. And nobody wants to get loomered, so everybody's just playing the game. And the game is to do whatever Donald Trump wants to do at that moment. There was a time, and again, back when I was an intelligence officer, when I came in, I was told from day one, your job isn't to tell your boss what he or she wants to hear. Your job is to tell them the truth, the unvarnished truth, and that it's their job to deal with the truth. And you were judged on this. I mean, I was fired several times during the Gulf War by General Schwarzkopf. Hell, he arrested me once because I told him the truth. But at the end of the day, when it was recognized that what I was saying was the truth, they always did the right thing. They gave me my job back and they put me out of arrest. They even gave me a medal. I said, good boy, leave. But the point is, you were rewarded for telling the truth. But now look what happened at the Defense Intelligence Agency. When you have career intelligence officers behave the way I was trained to behave, to tell the uncomfortable truth to the president, they're fired.